Okay, my name is Nicholas. I'm a PhD student with Dimitrios Buhalis at the eTourism lab. And basically the research project that I'm looking at, we entitled it The Service of Now. I want to give you today a talk about the main idea behind it, rather than going in depth and giving you an academic presentation. And I would like to start off with introducing you to Peter. Peter is, he works in marketing. He's a guy from the United States, and he works in the digital marketing field, and he works as a consultant. And he has long travel hours, and he goes to a lot of talks. And one day he was coming back from a talk, and he knew he was going to get back late to Chicago, where he was flying to. And he really likes Morton steaks. Morton is a US-based steakhouse chain. And just for a laugh, played around with his BlackBerry, and he said, you know, Morton's, I'd be dying for a steak. And can you meet me at Newark Airport? And Morton's, as a chain, they have loads of outlets, and they have corporate level, also headquarter, and someone there picked up the tweet. And he said, okay, let's do something about it. And 2.5 hours later, they delivered him the steak to the gate. And obviously, Peter was really happy about it. And he shared it with all his friends, and they shared it with their friends. And this is basically what I want to talk to you about today, is the service of now. And it's basically how can we use that real-time element that is in social media. So early on, the last talk from Philip, we heard about great things that you can do with blogs. But also another element of social media is that real-time engagement that you have in this real-time communication. And basically, I'm trying to look at how can you use that and how can you leverage that for managing your services in the context of tourism and hospitality. Before we jump into the technology bit, let's have a very quick look at what are some of the major challenges that you face when you're managing services, be it a restaurant, a hotel, or a tourism service provider. And one way of doing that, looking at it, is basically to have a look at a very simplified version of a service value chain. So before the consumption, before the consumer can actually buy and consume your product, you have to sit down and you have to develop your product, design it. And then the consumer comes, you deliver the service, it's a people industry, and at one point things probably will go wrong. And then you collect some feedback, and if you're really good, you take this feedback into account and you redesign your services, or you develop a new service to meet the demands of that feedback. Basically, when it comes to new service development and design, one of the big challenges is that it's very complicated. It's a complicated, long-lasting process. Maybe by the time you started the process until you have a fully launchable product, so from that initial idea to a fully launchable product, it might take a year. It might take half a year, but maybe the demands of consumers have then already moved on. So it's like a race trying to catch up. And we see later on that we could speed up this process by making use of technology. When it comes to service delivery, the tourism industry is a global industry, and we are competing with a lot of other businesses all around the world. And we've seen early on with the e-word of mouth presentation that there's absolute transparency about the product. So you have to make an effort in trying to stick out from the crowd. And one way of doing that is, for instance, trying to personalize the office that we have in hotels, trying to focus on the customer and be much more customer-centric, because our customers get much more demanding as well. But it's very difficult to personalize. You're trying to find this information everywhere about people. You have to feed it in some sort of database. It's very time-consuming. It's very resource-intensive. And you have to get to know a customer. You have to develop a relationship with a customer to be able to actually do some sort of meaningful personalization. Another problem is, we've seen early on, service failures. So you deliver a product, but it's so many people involved. The product is consumed and delivered and produced at the same time. So at one point, things go wrong. And that's no problem when you know about it, and basically collect the feedback and try to address it. When it comes to feedback collection, after the consumer is out, in the old days, maybe there would be a questionnaire that would be distributed, or you ask your customers, you call them up. And nowadays, you can use TripAdvisor, if we have seen, or you can collect your feedback from Booking.com. And one thing I just want to quickly highlight here, what the problem is with this is, we have this review where a few things went wrong. And this was reviewed in July, but the person stayed there in April. So in July, if the hotelier gets aware of these problems, it's too late. A second point, the problem about feedback collection after the consumer has left your premises is you might respond to it very timely, like the social media, Kelly from the social media team at the Premier Inn has done so, but to me as a consumer, what does it matter if 3 days later someone says, oh yeah, we're really sorry about it, and next time we try to do it better. They already ruined my holidays. So basically in the project, I'm looking at how social media is a game changer for this whole thing. I think we all know by now that social media is hugely important, that it is growing a lot. We sometimes read in the press, in the popular press, these numbers that Facebook has reached 900 million users. We read about the size of Twitter, and basically everyone is getting into the social media. We've seen early on in the presentation that it's from Phil that it's getting more and more important also for older demographics. And we can also see that in Western markets, we already reached a point of mass maturity. And what is now happening, or what has been happening over the past couple of years with social media, it's moving on. It's moving on from the early version of social media, which was very static. So we would have a blog, or you would have a comment section on a newspaper site. And it moves on to real-time social media. We have these microblogging services like Twitter, where it's about putting out an opinion or putting out something that concerns you right here and now. We had a change in how Facebook looks like. In the very beginning, Facebook just used to be about profiles, and you would go on someone's profile page and have a look at it and maybe leave a comment, and a day later that person would reply. But now I just take out my phone and do a picture and upload it, and people instantly react with it. I had a quick look at the stats behind the opening ceremony of the Olympics. And there you can see that it's basically 19% of worldwide social media conversation on that day revolved around the opening ceremony. And they put out 10 million tweets. And the web chatter just on that opening ceremony, and I think that really sums it up, was basically more than the entire web chatter of the Olympics 2008. So what we can see with this, or the point is I'm trying to make is people use these things, and they talk on social media increasingly about things that concern them right here and right now. They see the Queen jumping out of a helicopter in a James Bond style, and they tweet about it. And that's the new thing, and that's the situation we are confronted with, but we can also use that. And basically one way of using it, because we've seen this amount of data that is out there, but how do you use it for your own business? And it's basically by monitoring. It's like putting the radar up and seeing, okay, what's out there. And there are great tools. This is what they might look like. They monitor the different channels, and you can look for different keywords, and you can see how people are engaging, and there's a lot of analytical capabilities. And when you talk to people who work with social media monitoring services, or you read a bit around that literature, there's basically 4 developments that they outline where this whole thing is moving within the next years. And it's basically, right now we can already listen and discover the conversations in real time. Someone mentions my little hostel in Lyndhurst, and I get a pop-up on my radar. It's like, someone is talking about me. Increasingly, people using smartphones that have some sort of GPS capability. We might also be able to know where that person is that talks about my little hostel. And then they are developing increasingly sentiment capabilities. So basically, the program will tell me they're talking probably something positive about your hostel, or it's something negative, or it's something related to your room service. And when we connect this information with other information that is out there in social media, for instance, the things that I like and that I publicly display on my Facebook profile, you can also get an idea or a glimpse of who's actually that person that is talking about the things. So about their preferences, their psychographics. And it's a pretty powerful picture that we will have, that we can play with. And just to quickly sum up the points that we talked about now is, in the we have again our service value chain with the pre-consumption, the consumption, and the post-consumption. And we have the consumer that is engaging with each other, like we've seen earlier on with co-creation, but also increasingly with businesses through all these different channels constantly. Before they book a holiday, when they come up with the idea and the inspiration stage, while they are traveling and afterwards. And in the green boxes, you can see the things that we can basically take out from this. So we can create a powerful profile, get an idea of what people like. We get instant feedback, and we know where they are when they say the things, and basically they have a medium to voice their opinions. And if you remember, this is the first slide, the other elements of the service value chain, and this is basically now what the research project is looking at, is how can we take this phase of developing a service, how can we take this collection of feedback and the delivery of services and use all these social media capabilities that we have and shift them into the consumption stage. And basically look, what can we do with it now, and hence the service of now. And there are two things that are very obvious that immediately come to mind, and it's basically the kind of stuff for adapting the services that you already have, or try to personalize, or use it to surprise people, and also collect real-time feedback and recover failures immediately before people can even go out there and spread a negative reputation or negative word of mouth. And if you think that this is a bit far-fetched, I'd just like to spend the last few minutes of the presentation giving you examples of mainly tourism companies who actually get that and who start playing around with these things, and to show you that this is basically where the industry is moving. This is the only non-tourism example I have. I don't know, anyone here knows what this is about? Okay, some of you have seen it, and it's basically in February there was the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is actually the marketing event in the United States because people get really excited about what great adverts do the companies come up with during the Super Bowl, and they invest a lot of money. And basically what happened is they had a blackout. And some smart guy from Oreo just went on Twitter and immediately published this ad. You can still dunk in the dark. And this is basically real-time advertisement. This is the first step. So there's a situation, and the situation is only relevant now. This advertisement wouldn't be relevant 20 minutes later when the lights are back on. But at this very moment, they put it out, they reach their customers, and they convey a message. And this is the first layer, if you want. So it's about engaging and putting out a message. But now, I said in the beginning, we talk about managing services. So it's not only about getting out the marketing message, but it's about real engagement. It's about bending the service value chain. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Miami KLM example. Some of the students might have. It's basically KLM is one of the top innovators in using social media. They announced their new flight route. There was, I think, a year and a half ago, they announced their new flight route between Amsterdam and Miami. And they put it out on their channels, and they said, hey, from 25th of May onwards, we are flying now to Miami. Also, they announced it on Twitter. And a Dutch DJ came back to them and said, you know, a week earlier, I would have liked to go to Miami because there is a big DJ festival. And KLM challenged him and said, okay, if you bring me 150 people in the next over 24 hours or in the next week, we put on the flight. And as you can see here, you try to fill the plane, and then we got the flight. And he says, hello, KLM, can we fill up the jet, please? We got 150 subscribers already. And they put on a flight. And to exploit that a bit for their marketing purposes, they personalized the flight and put the DJ equipment on. But basically what this is really showing is a huge corporation like KLM uses social media and within 24 hours, they bend their service chain to such an extent that they put on a new airplane and introduced the route a week earlier. Second example that has not such huge implications, but is basically an example of more day-to-day, how this thing can be used day-to-day, is JetBlue. And basically someone just complained that they are a bit early at the check-in and no one is there to receive their luggage, and within minutes you got a conversation going, and you can see it started at 10:39 and at 11:15 someone says to them, okay, you should see some crew members showing up shortly. So basically they bend their service chain as well. They made the crew members maybe come a tiny bit earlier, so they personalized basically an offering for someone that is relevant here now, and that goes beyond asking someone, what newspaper would you like to read in the mornings, and then delivering someone a newspaper in the morning to the hotel room. And another thing is that goes away from personalization, but that is actually the real beauty about the real time on social media, is using that for service recovery. From marketing research, we know for the past 20, 30 years that consumers actually don't like voicing their complaints. I think every one of us can think about an example where something went wrong. You're on holiday, you sit in a restaurant, something is slightly wrong, but you wouldn't bother complaining for different reasons. Maybe you don't want to waste your time in complaining. Maybe you are from a culture where complaining isn't that appropriate. And basically, but what you do is you would go afterwards and you tell your friends. You say, that restaurant, they didn't get that right. And you spread the negative word of mouth. And also, people use channels like Twitter to spread, basically voice their complaints. And here's a good example of Omni Hotels who picked that up proactively and just say, okay, well, we read your water pressure is not good. The guy's coming up to you. And with this, I want to close. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always fascinating to think what we can do in real time. Quite often, you go to a hotel reception or you're talking to someone and you are expressing opinions and they still cannot actually engage with you and offer services that are acceptable. And this is about understanding what the customer is about to what the customer is really interested in before the customer actually expresses that to you directly. It's getting the information from wherever the information is expressed. Any questions? Any issues? Just say who you are.
I'm Steve. I run my own digital media consultancy business. I know two people, one who works for SoundCloud, which I think has something like 15 million users, and one who works for British Airways on their Twitter social media channels, and they describe it as a non-stop torrent of abuse. Because people do complain, they do complain quite vociferously. Whilst, of course, those companies can probably afford to staff those channels to achieve that aim, I'm just thinking about what about smaller businesses that are probably represented here, and how would they manage and resource real-time social media?
Yeah, I think there are two perspectives on this. On the one hand, I think you're absolutely right in saying that it's very staff and resource intensive if you want to do it like a company like British Airways, who would probably reply within an hour to almost every tweet out there. And it is difficult. But when saying this, one has to bear in mind the people will complain anyway. They won't stop. Not having a staffed Twitter account won't stop a consumer from complaining online about a service that went wrong. So this is the one side. The other side, when you talk about small enterprises, is that actually they have the disadvantage that they might not have the resources behind it. They have the huge advantage that if it's a very small and flat hierarchy, let's say a little bed and breakfast with 3 people working there, that when you spot these things, you can take immediately a decision, you can immediately implement it, because you're much more flexible and you're much more dynamic. So if I spot a tweet as a hotel owner that some of my guests would be dying for a kebab, I could immediately pick that guest, go to him, either recommend him the best kebab, call the local kebab shop and let him a kebab have delivered, and then say afterwards, hey, I know you're hungry, have it.
It's a double sword.
Well, again, you've got the resource to realise the tweet has been sent, because I think most small businesses will be running their business.
So, but if you are tagged if you are tagged on a tweet, it comes to your mobile phone. And what I do, I do a lot of training for small businesses, and a lot of people are saying, yeah, but I've got other things to do. You have nothing else to do than serve your customer.
Well, I'm sure there are examples when that is the case, but I've got a lot of clients that aren't able to respond to a mobile phone because they're with customers in their property, their premises. So it's not, I can't deal with that whilst I'm dealing with this. So, and also, you're assuming there that someone knows how to use Twitter when they're complaining, i.e. I actually use the right user account. And are you searching for keywords? Because tools like Radian are highly sophisticated tools for monitoring social media.
Well, yeah, definitely. And Radian is the high, yes, but there are so many free tools out there. And anyone who's interested in that should basically just go on Google and type in best top 10 free social media monitoring tools. There are amazing, very simple tools out there that might not give you the full range of everything that is technically possible at the moment, but that give you something that would allow you to very efficiently monitor the main channels out there, get immediately a notification when something happens, and I would see it rather from the point that if you manage to respond to 30% of the things out there rather than 0%, you're already done better than not doing anything. So
I'll give you an example. I'm helping a hotel manage itself online in Cyprus. You get a request and you start corresponding with the customer. Immediately, you realize that this is actually talking about a wedding in your premise. You're talking about 45 people coming for 2 weeks, and you start doing the maths. And the amount of opportunities that creates, it's enormous. The way I see it is that if someone goes into the shop, do we have the time to serve the customer, and how do we serve the customer? It's the same thing, it's a different medium. It's exactly the same thing. Thank you very much, Nicholas.